Hello, everyone. My name is Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal. And on today's podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Kelly Franko, president of Seraphina Safety Apparel. Kelly, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
I'm very well, and I'm really looking forward to learning a lot more about what you've achieved and how you came to be doing what you're doing and learning about how you got there. So, tell the listener a little bit more about Kelly and a little bit more about your journey and how that started.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me to be a part of this podcast. I always enjoy learning more about the fire service industry and how we can serve to protect, the people that protect us every day. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. And, it's interesting because one of my favorite quotes is a Steve Jobs quote about how you can't see the dots looking forward, but when you stop and look back, you can see how everything lined up to get you where you're at. And so, my background's healthcare. I've been in healthcare since I graduated college a couple years ago. But, it's just interesting because doing a lot of in that healthcare space with wound care, advanced wound care products, kind of just got me to this point where at the time my family drag races, and so we were at a professional racing industry trade show, and someone asked, they made the comment because I was having a conversation with another lady, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And at that particular time, I had gotten into helping ladies that had gone through surgery for breast cancer. So we were talking about post-mastectomy surgical garments and things. And I said, you don't know I do bras. And he was like, can you make a flame-resistant bra? And my husband's actually the one that said, yes, she can. And I was like, still kind of figuring out like, well, why wouldn't something already be out there, But, and so that's really how I took that turn out of healthcare and into the safety world and trying to figure out what is it that's missing and why, and what do we need to really focus on. And that led me to, we did start with that flame-resistant bra that we have a utility patent on now, and then continued to grow from there with the base layers and really focus on that niche of what are you wearing underneath and what can we do to keep anything from getting through to the skin should it get through that outer layer of protection. So that's been the journey to where we're at right now.
It's amazing how one opportunity can lead on to a whole new outlook, and and it's interesting what you talk about there about the base layer. And I look back to my first set of turnout gear nearly 40 years ago, and there was never any discussion about what was worn underneath it. It was whatever you were wearing at the time that you were called in to get called out. But as things have gone on, we start looking at the base layer in itself is PPE. So tell us the importance around that and what you've been able to do to advance technology.
So the one thing that when I really started looking at this was, again, having that background in healthcare and coming from working with ladies that had gone through breast cancer, one of the biggest things was trying to figure out which fabric type was going to work from a fit and comfort perspective, but also in a world where so many things had a lot of chemicals in it. I didn't want to have anything that was going to potentially cause harm because it was, up against the skin and going to be against delicate tissue that could potentially be absorbing those chemicals through the skin. So that was, that research and development piece of it was very instrumental because there's not a lot of fabrics that were on the market that gave the stretch that we needed. So when you look to the everyday world in creating undergarments and bras and base layers or whatever, there's no restriction. You can use whatever fabric you want to make it as pretty or whatever you want to make, add to it to embellish it. But really, when it came down to being able to find things to put our products together, it was kind of like, okay, I've got 3 pieces and I got to try to MacGyver something out of this, and what are we going to do? So fortunately, we were able to find and work with a fabric manufacturer that has a superior protection product. The advancements in their fibers and what they've put together just really give us such an advanced layer of protection. And for us, it was wonderful because I say it's cross-industry because it has exceeded the standards in so many different industries. So fire service being one of those. So we have an inherent fiber that has the fabric has no PFAS, no chemicals in it, but yet one of the main fibers is a pre-burned fiber, so it takes 3 times the amount of oxygen in the air to even be able to sustain a flame. So it really puts a nice protective barrier there between what you're wearing on the outside and what you have underneath. In addition to that, then you have all the benefits of its moisture wicking, and it helps to keep your body temperature down. It helps to get that sweat off of the body and away to help keep you cooler underneath. And then it dries really quickly. So even if it's something that, you're coming out of a situation and you're taking the turn off gear off or whatever, like our base layer garments help to provide that quick layer that's there. You're comfortable. You're okay if, it's okay to be walking around in, I guess is a way to say it. But it dries very quickly. So you're not soaked in sweat and kind of feeling grungy when you're, once you get your turnout gear off. So that's what has been really important to us is just, again, I don't want to do anything that's going to contribute to potential health issues in the future, given that that's been what I've spent the past, 30 years prior to getting into the safety world, was trying to, offer solutions for people that were going through difficult times with health issues. So I hope I answered that question. I got a little sidetracked there.
Well, no, it's a fascinating journey, and it's all about the education because firefighters are very resilient, but at times they can be ignorant to the facts, especially when it comes down to looking after their own safety. They're very focused on looking after the safety of others, and you talk there about the ability with regard to the wicking and the sweat. There's nothing worse than going into a hot environment with a sweaty undergarment that then just turns to steam and causes all sorts of issues with burns. And it's interesting when we talk about undergarments that are not fit for purpose and the hidden risks with that. So just explain the disadvantages and the hazards to firefighters that are looking and still wearing synthetic undergarments.
So I think what we see as the biggest risk is those synthetics will melt, and they often have a very low melting point. So if you picture sitting at a campfire and your legs start getting hot because the denim's getting hot, if you've got your jeans on, denim is quite the, it's a heavier fabric. So if you have that exposure to heat and you've got some of these synthetics, especially, on the fashion side of things, those garments now can be very very comfortable, but the makeup of those fibers have a low melting point. So even though your turnout gear or your outer layers may keep the physical fire off, that heat can sometimes be enough to start those undergarments, those underlayers, to to where they reach a melting point, and you can sustain a burn underneath without anything actually. With a fire, without a fire getting through, but the heat can be enough to penetrate and cause a melting injury that way. So then if we look at cotton, one of my things, especially on the industrial side, that I've heard from the very first day I started into the safety side of things was, we just wear cotton, and it's a natural fiber. And it doesn't melt, but it does disintegrate. So at the end of the day, cotton doesn't protect. So even if you're wearing that 100% cotton t-shirt, it doesn't offer any layer of protection, and it does hold moisture. So it keeps that, you mentioned steam burns, so it keeps that moisture up against your skin to where even that could turn into a steam burn if you're exposed to a high enough heat or a long enough duration of that heat. So at the end of the day, it doesn't protect. So my one of my biggest educational points here with cotton has been to get people to think through that logically, that we just wear cotton, it's not going to protect. And I know it doesn't melt, but it does disintegrate. So, we did a backyard burn one time with just a 100% Hanes cotton t-shirt, and that it immediately went up. And I wasn't prepared, and okay, how am I going to stop this thing from burning? Because it was going very quickly. And so we just threw a bucket of water on it, and it just literally was like somebody took a sword through that thing. It just dropped to ash, on the ground. And so really, if you want to give yourself the best option to be able to get in and out of any situation, you really want to consider what's underneath, and just kind of think through that process. If it's a synthetic, it's very likely, if you're exposed to enough of a hazard, it's going to melt, and cotton is not going to protect. So one of the things, it's instrumental to think of it before you're in the situation, because in the middle of it, if something's going wrong, you can't stop that accident from happening and saying, okay, wait, I want to rethink what I put on today. You're going to go through that accident with whatever choice you made prior to. So it's just really important to kind of think through the reality of what it is you're putting on before you go into that hazard.
Exactly, and we see thousands and thousands of pounds being spent on external PPE, fire hoods, gloves, boots, and then we undermine all of that by allowing our firefighters to in effect have free range on what they're wearing. And this is something that the industry needs to work alongside professionals such as you with the knowledge and understanding of the importance of putting the right garments in the underlayer to enhance what the PPE is giving in terms of protection.
Right. And one of the things that, again, I mentioned earlier about cross-industry protection. So I think and again, I've never worked in fire service, but as the outside looking in, I feel like there's hazards beyond the fire, because some of these situations that you see firefighters getting into may have other types of hazards that they come up against. So if there's electrical going on, there may be arc flashes taking place in addition to true fire. And so that's where that cross-industry protection, the fabric that we use is giving you that fire, the fire resistance, that fire protection. It's giving the protection from extreme heat, but also molten metal splatter. So if something were to ignite or whatever, or splash out at you, again, if it gets through that top layer, it's going to give you, our base layer is going to give you another layer before it can get to the skin, and in a comfortable way. It's a lightweight, breathable, odor-resistant fabric that has just a nice four-way stretch so that it doesn't bunch up underneath. It's just a nice thin layer underneath everything else that you've got to put on.
Yeah, and if you're comfortable, then you're gonna concentrate on the job in hand, and the fit of a garment is something that is just as vital as the comfort for the wearer. And I know that we as an industry have been woefully guilty of not providing sufficient choices of PPE for female firefighters, and thankfully we're now in a position where the choices available to all sizes of female, male firefighters is there and is fit for purpose. But the safety of the fit is just as important, isn't it?
It is. And one of the things when I got started was, again, we were really designing for female fit. And the more conversations that I had with ladies about what's wrong or what's missing, the more I learned about just the ways in which they were trying to wear the things they were given. And a lot of times it would include maybe an alteration that took away from the actual garments. I don't want to say it's protectiveness, but say you took it to an alterations place. Now it's not being fixed with Nomex thread or flame resistant thread. It's just being sewn back together. So you're taking away from the purposefulness of the garment simply by recreating using the incorrect thread when you're putting it back together. So things like that in conversations early on with ladies to find out, what is it that you're doing to make things fit, or the other side of that were just things that women were omitting because there wasn't a way to make it fit. So they just chose not to wear a specific part of their PPE programs. So definitely put them at risk for exposure to things that maybe their male counterparts wouldn't have, just simply because things were not fitting. I spoke to a girl. She was in the fire service at a refinery. And, her comment was, and she's very petite. So her boots were up to her knees, her sleeves, her shoulders are down to her elbows on her jackets, her knees are at her, the crotch is at her knees. And she's like, in the minute when something happened and I needed to be able to get out, she said, I couldn't even get out of my own way because everything was just so large on me, I couldn't run. And then she had someone have to pick her up and carry her out. And she's like, and now that's the absolute worst thing. She's like, because I put someone else at risk because they had to come back and get me. And so that story has stuck with me from the beginning because it was just not one particular piece of her PPE, but everything that she had just contributed to putting her at risk. And then again, somebody else that had to come and help her. So I think now that we are seeing, as you mentioned, there's a lot more thought being given and products being made specifically to that women's fit to make sure that women are able to function to their best of their ability without having compromise due to fit of their PPE.
It's still not perfect, but it's certainly come a long, long way, and it's embarrassing to sit here and think that we've allowed that to go on for so long. But through interactions by people like yourselves and the more forward-thinking fire chiefs and PPE garment manufacturers, we're now providing the protection that female firefighters need and quite rightly deserve to be able to do their job without needing any assistance. I want to touch back. We talked about moisture. We talked about the effects of sweat and the potential for steam burns. Let's look at moisture management, and that would lead us nicely into the issues of thermal stress. So, what work have you done in relation to that, and how is modern undergarments beginning to deal with that?
So it really starts with the base of the fabric and the fibers that are going in to create that fabric. And that's actually when it's just so intriguing to me when you look at what comes together to make any piece of fabric. I remember being approached by an individual from a fiber company about, have you ever considered making your own fabric? And it was kind of like, I don't even know what that would look like. It was such a vague concept to me that I had no idea where that process started. And then it was interesting because I had some opportunity to go onto a college campus that, they have this great textile program and everything. And so then when you see it from the ground up, it really is just such a fascinating industry to look at. You take what just looks like threads, and this incredible machine, which a lot of times I think back to, like, who thought to make that machine, do what it's doing. But, and you watch these things coming together into these, rolls of fabric that you're able to work with. But it really was almost like mixing a drink. You want flame resistance. I needed to, wick away moisture. I needed to control odor. And then whatever you put together, they take those fibers and it's woven or knitted into whichever type of fabric you need it to be. So when it comes to that moisture management, if we can keep the body with the sweat off of the body and it's pulling that away, then it helps to keep you cooler throughout the time that you're in that situation too. And then when it dries quickly, it's getting that moisture, again, it's away from the body, but then that fabric is drying quickly so that you're not going into a situation where it might make you cool because you're wet. I know not necessarily in the fire service, but one of the examples we were given were when, you're in under all this equipment or all of these layers and you're sweating, then you take those layers off and you're exposed to the air, you're wet. And so now you're cold because you're wet, where our garments are quick to dry so that it eliminates that going from a very hot, sticky feel to now being exposed to the elements and being very cold. And that really comes down to the fiber makeup of the fabric and its ability to do what each of those fibers were intended to do. So, and I just, if you can keep the body drier, you're just more comfortable underneath because you're not getting that sticky, wet feeling underneath that you're trying to pull away from you or try to fan, try to get that air going through because it's stuck to you. So if we can continue to work with products and create better fitting PPE that has these advanced technical advantages to them, then it pays off in the end by, again, going back to that comfort, not just from the fit of the garment, but the feel of it as well.
Exactly, and you take some busy departments where you've got crews that are going from one instant to the next. They've not necessarily got the opportunity to go back to station to change into a new set of undergarments. So the ability for that to dry and become comfortable again is vitally important. One of the things I like the analogy you made there about the manufacturing of the garment is a bit like mixing a cocktail, and it's looking at all the individual components that you need a garment to do and ensure that you've got the best materials that are available to bring that together. And we talk a lot on podcasts about the need to do your procurement and your homework properly to ensure that you are getting the best for what you're being sold, because a lot of the time we're seeing the market flooded with low quality, low cost equipment and apparel from various parts of the world, and you must hear it all the time where you're speaking to departments that have bought something that no longer or was never fit for purpose. So just explain from your side that the importance of the need to talk to professionals such as yourself to know that what you're buying is what you're getting.
That is a very big situation, because there's, depending on how that is managed, if you give individuals the responsibility or the ability to go and purchase whatever they want, we have had several times where we've been contacted because of incidents where we told our crew to, just go get cotton T-shirts or wear cotton socks, and if you don't pay attention to the labels and you're not really looking at the makeup of that fabric, it's very easy to think it's cotton when it's really a 70-30 blend. And that 30% of whatever is what's going to cause the harm, because that is way over, I'll say the limit, but I don't know that it's truly a limit, but the recommendation of, usually you don't want it to be more than 6 or 7% of some other fiber if you're looking at a cotton product. But and that's when things happen. You have that 70-30 blend. You thought you had cotton, and then you have somebody's hurt. And so when we talk with departments or safety managers, whoever the procurement person might be, it is an additional layer. So it's something with our product line that we're looking to add, because it's a layered protection system. So you start at the foundation, your body, your skin level, and you build outward. And so when we're having those conversations, it's really about if anything else gets through, we have that last line of defense that will give just one more defense mechanism. It gives you an additional period of time to get away from the hazard before anything gets through to you. And at the end of the day, if you've reduced the risk or you've eliminated that 3rd degree or 4th degree burn that someone may have incurred, the savings are on the other side of that. It's, that person's not having to deal with that burn injury in the recovery period of that. You don't have the medical expenses of that. You don't have your incident expenses of that. So, and the one thing in chatting with folks, just helping them understand really the process of burn injuries, and what that looks like, because a lot of times it's not just a simple coverage with a gauze pad and then it goes away in a week and you're okay. Burn injuries bring a lot of other potential for things like infections, and infection is often the cause of further damage or healing being delayed, or creating additional things that are required, whether it's further debridement of that. Burn injuries can lead to amputations because that infection takes over and you can't save that skin. So there's just a lot behind the scenes. I don't even know if I want to say behind the scenes, but there's just a lot to a burn injury that I think is often maybe overlooked or just not considered in a purchasing decision making. So that's where we're at when we're talking with people, is just trying to explain how that thin layer underneath can add a whole lot more protection to your PPE system.
It's also liability as well, and I think this is the big issue with fire departments. Some are very open and thirsty for knowledge to learn exactly what is required. Others try and ignore it for as long as they can. But as I regularly say, you can't not know something and this is why podcasts such as this get those messages across to say, you can no longer hide behind not knowing, because the information's out there, it's readily available. And when your firefighters are coming knocking on the door to the chief saying, what you're giving us is not fit for purpose, there's better options out there, that's when a department potentially becomes liable for the injuries that may be caused by ignoring and becoming ignorant to the facts. But I think that that's certainly not limited just to the fire service. We see that across all industries where people allow themselves to be blinkered by financial restraints rather than looking at the wider picture.
We've tried to eradicate as many barriers to our product as possible. So, because at the end of the day, we want the product's only helping someone if it's on someone. So we've tried to remove as many barriers to purchasing, meaning you can buy direct from us. There's no minimums. There's, if you need to try something first. So we know what our product does, but until you've experienced it yourself, it's, you just don't know what you don't know. So we again try to make it to where there's as few as barriers as possible. And when we got started with this, the number of women in fire service or in the industrial space, it was a much lower percentage than it is today. And so we've taken that from a niche of a niche of a niche to, what do we need to do to help the women in your workforce, in your service? What can we do to make sure you get what you need and mitigate some of that financial burden, but at the same time, start helping you understand why you need to be providing that extra layer. So, and it does come down to education and just being, open to having the conversation and to discuss what looks right for your group.
It's also very much I see and have seen for many years that the influencers within the departments that are pushing for change are the firefighters. The firefighters are thirsty for knowledge and understanding. They'll listen to podcasts such as this. They'll go to trade shows. They'll go out of their way to learn about new things. And they're the people that are knocking on the door of the chief saying, you can do better. We can do better as a department. We can protect our staff, which will reduce the injuries, reduce the impact of having people off the line while they're recovering. And so it's, as you say, education, and it's pushing and providing that education, be that through just reading a website or talking to end users. You touched on a bit there, which was really interesting in terms of the providing of the right level of PPE and the right fits. And again, as it stands, I still hear too many occasions where female firefighters are saying that they're unable to get the right kit, and this message gets sent out far and wide. And if we're still in a situation where potential female recruits are saying, why should I join something where I can't be properly protected? And so the impact on recruitment and retention of females within the workforce is very much down to the education that you can provide the departments and the other industries.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think too, as we talked a little bit earlier too, you mentioned about knowing what you're actually buying and is it really what you think it is. And when we have that opportunity to chat with folks and help provide that level of education, there's a lot of things that can go wrong when it's not what you think it is. And one of the things that I've found in my work with different groups, sometimes they're not even aware of exactly what hazard they need to be protecting from. So, and not so much with fire service, but in some of these industrial, they'll, for example, look to an electrical certification. It's Cat 2 and it's got this ATPV value, so that's what we're supposed to wear. But they don't even face an arc flash hazard. They might face a molten steel hazard. So it's like, that arc flash rating isn't going to do anything against the hazard that you are really facing. So that's one of the, an additional piece of that education where we really want people to think about what part of this is important to you. What is the hazard that you're up against? Is it heat? Is it fire? Is it molten splatter? And what is it that we're going to be able to help you stay protected against? Because the other side of that is the whole counterfeit market, right? So again, kind of going back to allowing people to buy their own. For example, if someone's given X amount of money to spend on their protection, they might get on a website and see, this is only $26, so I'm going to buy 5 of these instead of 1 of that. But and unfortunately, you don't know if you bought counterfeit or not until it fails. When you're in the middle of a situation and that garment fails. So those conversations, when we go and talk with the procurement and the safety and the fire chiefs and things, we want them to understand what to look for to make sure that you're protecting against the hazard you need to be protecting against, and you're purchasing what you think you're buying. And that's where working with reputable brands, people that you can know and trust, people that the brands that are out there at the trade shows or the events where you're able to actually go and have those conversations, then you know that you're getting what you thought you bought, and you're not finding out after the fact.
Exactly, and this is where we've discussed it on other podcasts where procurement is a profession that needs to be done properly, and procurement professionals will very much undertake their due diligence and will ensure, like you say, that if you're dealing with a website that's faceless, with no ability to engage with a human face to face, then it should be setting the alarm bells ringing straight away. And there's nothing better than going to a trade show, being able to speak to somebody face to face, build up that personal relationship, and at the same time building up that trust and confidence within the individual and the product. And that's where the companies that are going to be at the trade show the following year will be the ones that you know are to be trusted. It's the ones that turn up with a deal too good to be true, that are often too good to be true, and you never see them again once they've got your money. So we certainly applaud companies such as yourself that are coming into the fire market with the ethos of making things better, and with a real depth of experience and understanding. We've covered a lot this afternoon, and it's been great. It's been refreshing for me to hear how by going into one market, you've been able to bring your experience and expertise into assisting the fire service, and working towards getting everything that we need, not specifically just for male firefighters, but also fit for purpose PPE for female firefighters. So as we begin to wrap up this podcast for the day, what would you like to leave the listener with in relation to Seraphina Safety Apparel, and any further information they may wish?
Really, I one of the things I try to communicate is our openness and willingness for feedback. So, at the end of the day, there's a lot of innovation in this space, and it's really come from listening to firefighters and finding out what the real life experience is that they're having. I mentioned before, I know what our products can and will do, but I'm not a firefighter, so I'm not in that situation with my products on to really get that feedback. And we've created a lot of things that have and made changes to our products based on what those in the field have said. So if it comes back that it would be nice to have this, we add that, or we might tweak a fit or whatever. And our new products, things that we've continued to work on developing, it's all come from feedback. And we always ask what's wrong and what's missing. I've asked that from the beginning. I continue to ask those questions. And so anything that we can learn from those doing the work just helps us to be better and being able to protect them in the situations that they find themselves when they're called out on a fire.
And the end user, be that firefighters or in other industries, always appreciate the ability to provide open and honest feedback. And a lot of times they're faced with manufacturers that say it's one size fits all, this is you got available. But it's so refreshing when manufacturers openly take feedback, act upon it, and work with the end user to provide a product that's fit for purpose. And it certainly comes through loud and clear that you guys at Seraphina Safety Apparel are do exactly what it says on the tin, and you're to be congratulated on that. Kelly, it's been an absolute pleasure for me to spend time with you today. I'm Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and I've been talking to Kelly Franko, president of Seraphina Safety Apparel. And if you need to know more information, or just thirsty to find out more, go to seraphinasafety.com, where you can find out everything you need to.